Well, we have a new development on Oz's Becker Mexico TR. This relay here is the epitome of a multifunction relay if I've ever seen one. It does pretty much 6 things at one time. It has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 sets of points on it. They look like ignition points. The one out of his radio was the plastic standoffs that move the contacts against one another. The plastic standoffs on Oz's car were melted. So between a radio that Oz found and one that I had here at home in my parts stash, I've been able to take the 3 radios and make one good relay. And that's what you get into when you start playing with these old radios. I think I mentioned somewhere before I restore older antique televisions, and same thing with those. Some of those parts on those old televisions are unique to that car, much like a grill is unique to a Pagoda, or the hood ornament is unique to a 600 Mercedes. And these relays are unique to a certain time period of when Becker was making the Grand Prix and the Mexicos. So I've labeled where all the wires go on this half of the relay, and I took pictures. Never forget to take pictures. Too many times have I not, years ago, and then I have to go find a schematic and figure out where everything goes the long way. Schematics scare a lot of people, but they're a lifesaver. If you learn how to read them, there is similarity between schematics made for a late 40s Zenith television and a late 60s Becker radio. It's usually all laid out very well. You need to learn how to read colors in German lingo, technical lingo for electronics. And I guess I take for granted that a lot of people can do that, but maybe they can't. But if you could learn to speak English and count, you can learn colors in German. So I'm going to put this new set of points, which are right here, or a new used set of points, onto Oz's original relay. And I've already got the 0.22 microfarad capacitor soldered onto one of the legs of this new set of points here, with the unmelted standoffs, these little plastic standoffs. What happens is when this electromagnet is energized, it pulls this down, this little pointer here, which allows remember the little clockwork thing? This goes up in this little hole right here. That little tooth of the relay there catches that plastic gear in there and stops this from turning. So when you push this seek button right here on the top of the radio, it pulls this down, allows the clockwork to turn and the tuner to move, and when it finds a strong station, it will de-energize this solenoid and raise it back up and stop everything from moving. Well, when that happens, you have 6 sets of points that move simultaneously when this little metal lever is moved, when the solenoid is energized. And as you can see when I move it, see how those standoffs move all the sets of points? So it's doing that on this side and this side, which is where this one would go. That's what that screw is. It holds it. screw holds them on. Again, you know, if this was completely shot, I mean, you can take it apart, you can clean the points. The only thing you can't do is replace those plastic standoffs when they melt. I'm sure you could devise something if you really wanted to, but this one relay was in an old, a later Mexico I had. It had water damage, and I knew it'd never see the light of day again because it had so much wrong with it from the rust and water damage inside. One of the screws was, I had to drill one of the screws out to get this out. It was so rusted inside of the radio. So I don't feel bad about taking that radio apart because its internal parts will hopefully live on and make Oz's radio work. So even the solenoid I took out of the later Mexico matched the numbers on Oz's original solenoid in his radio. Now, after I get this done, I'll finally be able to move on to the amplifier that we've already talked about in depth, but I will show it once more. It's neat to look at, isn't it? I'm still curious about how this will sound after all the electrolytics are replaced. Now, I know a lot of people would much rather diagnose and repair. You know, I'm not against that. I'm for that. But as I mentioned earlier, when your electrolytics are 50 plus years old, you know, and you're not, and it's not, you're helping somebody else on their radio, you just replace them out of principle. They're cheap, and it's cheap insurance. So there are a lot of other people that are like me. I'm pretty anal and in what I do and how I do my work, detail oriented, and I like to do everything completely and in its entirety. And oftentimes that gets me into a lot more trouble, and I end up spending, you know, triple the amount of time on a project I want to. But that's how it goes. So I've got the radio all in a mess again. And as I said, I get myself in a lot of trouble sometimes. But if you make notes, you have a good eye, you can put everything back like it was, and everything will work fine. You know, for the most part, these old Beckers, they're built very well. They're very resilient when they are mishandled. And I think as the years progressed, I think Becker got lazy and cheap on how they, you know, on their build quality. I'm talking about in the early mid 80s, like a Becker 599, like you'd find in a very early 80s 123 chassis Mercedes. They still kind of had the look of the old chrome face Beckers like Oz's radio as far as the dial scale goes, but they had everything around. The chrome was gone. It was all black plastic. You had these large plastic knobs with looked like duck bills on them to turn them with. I thought it was a very unattractive radio. And then the 612 came out, which was the Grand Prix electronic, the first Grand Prix electronic. And, you know, it had the crystal readout display on the dial scale to tell you what station you were on, etc. Well, after, you know, so many years and being in so much heat, that crystal display would bleed out, and then you can't see anything. Same thing happens with the later Grand Prix, and they're expensive to repair too. I mean, it's almost not worth it. But I don't know, if you're like me, you want to keep the car original, you'll spend ungodly amounts of money to do just that, because, well, I'm crazy that way. One other area I'm crazy in is I live in the South. It gets hot here, and I will spend my last red cent making sure all of my cars have working air conditioning. I don't mind to work outside when it's hot, but you put me in a hot car, I will not be happy. So, but anyway, we're going to continue on, and I'm going to put this other half of this solenoid back on, because I'm not going to replace the whole solenoid, because the other half of Oz's original solenoid, the plastic standoffs are not damaged. It was just on the one side, which is okay by me, because that's less work. So off we go, and I will return.